We're just trying to get better because we want every kid in every class everywhere to get excellent instruction. And that's kind of the story. But just to say that where we are now and where we were in 2006 are radically different. The book Instructional Coaching is pretty much obsolete now. And so what I hope I can convey today is just a little bit of, mostly we've made mistakes and learned from our mistakes. So I hope I can share some of that. You know, the story of like the three-legged chair, and if one part of the leg breaks, the chair falls over. Well, this is conceptually impossible, but if you could have a seven-legged chair, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I would say, and there are different ways people might do instructional coaching, but if you're doing it kind of in the way we do it, which is you're helping teachers have a bigger impact on students, then these things kind of have to be in place, these 7 things. And the first 3 are about who I am. Right. So what are the beliefs that guide my practice? And what we believe is, and I think we have evidence to support it. One study we did, which you can download online, showed an effect size of 1.02 on change when we do coaching. But we believe that the change happens from the inside out, not from the outside in. And so trying to get the idea that as a coach, I go watch you, and then I tell you what you did right, what you did wrong, and I try to get you to buy into my view, is not the way we would do it. We think coaching should be structured to unleash the other person's potential and their brilliance, as my friend Kristen Anderson says, by having them set a goal that they think is really, really important, and then helping them pursue the goal, a powerful goal. So the partnership approach, which is the first thing, the set of the beliefs, it's really about how do we set up a situation where I'm not telling the other person, what I'm doing is an active service to help them hit the goal that they think is really, really going to make a difference. And it has to be a powerful goal. It's going to have an unmistakably positive impact on kids, but that's the first thing. And then, like every other probably coaching approach, we recognize the importance of coaching skills, what Diane calls moves, but in particular, the way you listen, the way you ask questions, the kind of questions you ask. It's a little bit like improv. And not that I've ever done improv, but
I have done improv, so.
Okay, well, good. Well, you can tell me if this is true or not.
Yeah.
So what I read about improv is you have to be a really good listener, and it's a little exciting, but a little stressful because you don't know what you're going to do until the other person does their thing. And so for us, you have a list of what Christian Van Nuremberg calls favorite questions. And then based on what the person says, you ask those questions to invite them to think deeper. And when coaching is really effective, the person should have the acronym that John Campbell uses as ACE. They should have a sense of the action they're going to take. They should have clarity and energy. And so the second thing is the skills you have. The third thing would be the way you lead other people. And leadership, there's a whole host of things there about how I lead myself, which involves self-care and getting clear on my purpose. Yeah. But it's also about leading others, which is about balancing ambition with humility. And so the who I am part of instructional coaching is, I need to know what beliefs guide my work. I need to be pretty skillful at listening and questioning and other communication skills. The book Better Conversations, the whole bunch, but the heart of it is listening and questioning. And then I need to be able to interact in a way that helps other people be more capable and lead myself and lead others. And one of those is missing, you're in trouble. Now, the other side, I know I'm trying to keep it quick, is you need a coaching cycle, or what others would call a conversational framework, but you need some kind of structure to move through. And we have one called the impact cycle, which evolved from about 15 years of research. Look at instructional coaching, nothing's in there. And then we used different models over years. We worked with coaches in Oregon and then in Washington State, then Othello, Washington. And we just kept revising this cycle to get something simple. But the idea is you get a clear picture of reality, set a goal, and you identify a strategy to hit the goal. And Diane would be the first one to tell you, because this is the heart of her work, is that it's a student-focused goal. Mm-hmm. I'm not focused on the change that I'm going to make. Now, I have to make a change, but what I'm focused on is the change in students. And that change could be engagement or achievement. Now, some people don't embrace engagement as a coaching goal, but I think if your focus is on equity, you have to say we're focused on engagement, because the literature is pretty clear. The reason kids drop out is because they lack engagement. Right. And in particular, emotional engagement. Do the kids feel safe? Do they feel like they belong? Do they have friends in school? Is the learning meaningful? And so So there's engagement goals, but also achievement goals, which is usually about constructing rubrics or using tests or quizzes or possibly checks for understanding. Rubrics more for skills and tests and quizzes more for knowledge. And then in order to make that cycle work, the impact cycle, which is designed to help the teacher identify a powerful goal they want to hit, but a goal that really matters to the teacher. Teacher doesn't care about the goal, you're not going to hit the goal.
Right.
And so you want the thing the teacher thinks about when they drive home or when they wake up in the middle of the night, what's on their mind. That's a thing. We call it a peers goal. I won't go into all that, but there's a very specific kind of goal. But to hit the goal in the impact cycle, the coach has to be able to gather data, which is the second part of the what I do. And you need to gather data so you can get clear on where you want to, what my goal is, and to measure progress. And one of the things a coach does is they build hope by showing progress and by demonstrating a pathway to the goal. And so the data helps the teacher develop agency because they can say, wow, this really is working. And then, of course, if we're going to hit the goal, we need to know what those strategies are we're going to use to hit the goal. That's what we call an instructional playbook, a set of practices that are high impact, that you're continually refining that playbook, always getting clearer and clearer on what helps teachers hit goals. So the impact cycle, we have a process we follow. Teachers set goals, so we need data. And to hit the goals, we need those strategies. That's the what I do part. And then the last part, I'm doing this thing because we have kind of a Venn diagram in my mind. I said in my workshop yesterday, if I get a tattoo, it's going to be this. But I'm not getting a tattoo. But anyway, the last, but somebody else could. I'm happy to see a picture.
I'm like,
of it, but
sure you want to get matching Venn diagram tattoos at some point after the school?
No, I'm good for other people, but I don't like paying too much. So I'll let other people do those needles. But it's all good. I'm all up for them doing it. And the last part is where you work. Right. And there needs to be role clarity. And there needs to be clarity around how the coach is going to use their time. And there needs to be theoretical consistency amongst those the coach reports to and what the coach does. If the principal has one set of principles they work from and the coach has a different set, it's probably not going to work very well. They need to meet pretty frequently. And people across the school have to understand this coaching is really a good thing. It's going to save you time. It's going to help you reach more kids. This is a powerful, cool thing. And so you also get clear on things like, you know, what's our policy around confidentiality and so forth. So those are a whole bunch of things, but who I am, that's my beliefs, the way I communicate, and the way I lead, what I do, which is the impact cycle, which involves data and strategies, and where I work, which is about ensuring we're in a situation where the coach is set up to flourish. That's the whole thing. Does it have to be one? That's kind of a tough, but at any rate, I would say the most important thing is to get clear on the role of the coach. Sit down with a piece of paper and go through, and there's forms like this with the book, but it's just a T-chart. So sit down and list all the things the coach is going to do and then think them through and then say, okay, well, how much of your time is going to be spent on the coaching cycle? Probably you want 70, 80% of your time. Mm-hmm. If every person you work with is going to take 3 or 4 hours, every time you do something that takes the coach away for 4 hours, that's one less person you're going to be able to coach. So get really clear on what you will and won't do. If the coach is going to be asked to be a part of every PLC, well, that's going to be 20 hours a week. And so that if they're expected to do impact cycles, that's going to cut them down quite a bit. If they're going to do walkthroughs, right? Again, the walkthroughs are going to take a lot of time. They also sort of make you look like you're an administrator, and it's not a coaching cycle. So every school is different. Every school has to make their decisions about what they're going to do. But I think the most important thing is that the coach and the principal, or whoever it is that the coach reports to, but there's real clarity around this is how we're going to spend our time. Because too often, and we did a survey a few years ago where we asked coaches, what's your major roadblock? And 95% of them said time. Right. And too often the coach is expected to do miracles. They're supposed to do a cycle, but do a million other things on top of it. Well, if it's going to take you're going to be in the teacher's classroom, you're going to have a coaching conversation, you're going to prepare for that conversation. Maybe you're going to watch video. All those things take time, and you can't do it. It's like time on task. You can't do it unless you have the time to do it.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we are so excited to have such a respected voice in the field of coaching and professional development with us today. Just a quick bio about Diane before we jump in. With roots stemming as a teacher and coach in the Denver public school system, Diane is an educational consultant and author. To name just some of her work, she is the author of Student-Centered Coaching from a Distance, The Essential Guide for Student-Centered Coaching, and you can now pre-order her new guidebook, Moves for Launching a New Year of Student-Centered Coaching. Diane, thank you so much for being with us today.
Some of the things that coaches have experienced, obviously, over the past few years with the disruption have really, I think, reminded us of the importance of deep, deliberative, quality partnerships and work with teachers. And when a coach is pulled out to sub for classrooms all the time, and to just suddenly help teachers learn how to teach online, who've never signed up to be online teachers to start with. And you have this just real erosion that happened with the coach's role, and nobody signed up for all that stuff. And so the first phase is building relationships, obviously. Now you might have relationships, you might have a new principal, and that's the relationship you want to build. You might be a new coach to a new school. You might be a first-time coach, an experienced coach. So this isn't limited to just new coaches. It's everybody needs to remember to really build that foundation of relationships. And then we kind of move toward intentional planning with the principal. So getting clear on the role of the coach, helping get on the same page with your principal around who should be coached, when should we start with people, how are we going to organize this work, how are we going to measure our impact, things like that. And then we move into the third kind of phase, which is messaging and marketing coaching, and thinking about how do we communicate to channel Simon Sinek why coaching matters, first of all, and then how can you engage as a teacher, so that we're really thinking about broad-based, authentic engagement, not just coaching a couple teachers in a school, but building a culture for coaching where folks have lots of entry points in and out of the work that are relevant and meaningful to them. But what we're hoping is for this year for us to get back to full coaching cycles, meaning 4 to 6 weeks in duration, aligned with a unit of study. The impact is measured. So we measure based on growth by the teacher as well as growth by the students in terms of proficiency to the standards. So that got lost. And so when we think about launching the year, we really want to set ourselves up to not still be dwelling in the I can't do coaching cycles. We have to get back there. That is, I think, especially for newer coaches, I think one of the biggest fears coaches carry with them is this feeling that they have to be the experts and that they have to have all the answers. And so we're always trying to remind coaches that it's really about being a co-thinker. It's really about being a thinking partner. It's about trying to uncover options for how to meet the needs of students together as a partnership. It could be a pair, it could be a team. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in how coaches can organize their work. I think another big area that we really want coaches to be comfortable in is just the act of questioning, and to be okay with, and that really goes side by side with being a thinking partner, with the fact that you can drive with questions just as well as you can drive with answers. And so when we think big picture about student-centered coaching, we are very focused on this idea of partner and co-assessor. And we're very focused on coach spending a lot of time in the classroom. But when you go into a classroom, when a coach is in there, you can't tell the difference. It's not as if one person's up modeling a lesson and another one's watching and trying to copy what that person did. It's about, let's listen to kids. Let's kid watch. Let's notice a name is the term we use for that. Let's think aloud together and have moments together where we pull off to the side and we say, oh my gosh, they're getting it. Or, oh, this one small group needs a little nudge. Can we do that together? So the time in classrooms is so vitally important. And if I was a principal, I would say my coach needs to be in the classroom a lot of the time. I want to see that on a coach's calendar. If they're not, then I need to help that coach by being an advocate and by making sure that coach is positioned to be doing that deeper, classroom embedded. So we recommend, that's a great question. And it's common because you go from being a teacher where you have a highly structured day literally handed to you. This is your schedule, to a very unstructured role, which is not always comfortable as we think about how do we do our work and make an impact at the same time. So I always recommend thinking about your schedule as, and this is kind of a metaphor that's kind of fun to think about, like you're going to physical therapy. So Jim and I share this trait. We crash on bikes and break things. So I broke my leg like 3 years ago, and I had to obviously go to physical therapy. And so my physical therapist, we had an obvious goal, which was for me to be able to walk again and be athletic again. And that was just the healing process. That was my goal. So the physical therapist says to me, you're going to have to, this is going to take this long. We're going to have this many sessions. We're going to work on these things and we're going to measure our growth. And measuring growth was was literally concrete measurement of, my leg and how it was working. So if we think about applying that concept to coaching, scheduling coaching, what we're doing is we're scheduling around the goal, right? So the goal for us typically is something academically focused. So it would be, I want my students to be able to solve ratios, solve real world problems using their understanding of ratios. So you've got something like that as your goal. Well, that's going to take probably about a unit duration to reach. So when I schedule that, what I need to be thinking about, and this goes to what does a coach's day or week look like in a second, but when I schedule that, I need to be thinking, all right, I'll be in that teacher's classroom a few times a week, and we'll be co-planning a few times a week. And if this is a team, then I'll be in each of their classrooms every week. So that takes a chunk of time. So it's so much more helpful to think about scheduling, like we call them coaching cycle rounds. So I've got, let's say, 4 coaching cycles going at once, starting October 1st. I'm going to be then working my schedule to be in those, might be 5 teachers, those 5 teachers' classrooms, and have planning time with those 5 teachers each week. But then what happens is your schedule, when that phase ends, when those cycles wrap up, which typically be when the ratios unit ends, then I'm going to relaunch my coaching cycles, get a different group of folks, kind of like a physical therapist. But now I have a different set of clients because those folks reached their goal. So now I got to figure out a schedule where I can get in those folks' rooms and those. So it's a fluid process. I can't say a week looks the same. And even the first week of school is going to look very different than a week in October, which would look very different than a week during testing season. But what we recommend is about 60% of a coach's time is in either mini or full coaching cycles. And then the rest of their time might be filled with things like going to PLCs or meeting with the principal or planning and delivering some professional learning or informal support, maybe support with classroom management. So we shoot for a 60-40 split, 60% of the time in cycles, and then 40% of the time doing that other work. But that's not going to be happening on the first day of school. That's why we're really helping with what those first weeks look like to get you to the point when you can have a schedule that represents 60% of your time in coaching cycles.
If we could, I'm actually going to introduce you really quickly. Erin is a career educator who's been transforming lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And he's taught for over a decade in the classroom. He's served as an elementary principal and has also worked as a district curriculum coordinator. And we now find Aaron as the early learning manager for Dallas ISD and our very own KickUp guru. Aaron, can you give us just like a 1-minute summary of the work that early learning is doing?
Sure. So early learning is a part of a larger department in Dallas ISD, the Leading and Learning Division. We are the second largest district in the state of Texas, and I believe we're the 16th largest in the United States. So currently this year we have 129 coaches working with over 2,000 teachers at over 180 elementary schools and pre-K partnership sites all across Dallas County. We work with anywhere from pre-K 3 all the way up to third grade teachers. And our focus is really on three different areas: enriching teacher-student interactions, supporting teachers as they deliver rigorous instruction, and then always building the capacity of both the teachers and the administrators to continue the work when we're not there with them. So really what we were looking for was a platform, and this is where KickUp comes in, to take our coaching moves here. And you see on the screen, we've got the impact cycle. We kind of tweaked it a little bit just to embed the relationships, but we needed a way to kind of get some data from that so that we could show progress, whether it be district-wide measurements, whether it be state assessments, whether it be formative assessments, it could be school-based. We needed a better way of capturing that data and then tying that to our work. And what we used before KickUp was a Google Sheet that was really tricked out and had so many equations in there, it really kind of was not feasible. So we decided to go with a program like KickUp that was designed for coaches, and we've been very pleased. All right, so what we're looking at, and I'm not going to get real deep into the weeds, but this is just an aggregate view of our coaching log. And this is the original log. We've also kind of piloted a new log that we're going to get into a little bit later in our talk. And so there's many different ways here that we can kind of break down our hours, break down our support. And so one of the things that we talk about in our coaching is how is your coaching moves reflected in the impact cycle and what are we doing? And so we've got this big drop down here, and all of this data is coming from what are the different elements on that coaching log. So when our specialists, so let me back up a little bit. So when our specialists go into the classroom, they support the teacher. Could be planning, it could be just a traditional classroom visit to where they're modeling, they're co-teaching, they're doing some side-by-side. When they come out, usually at the last hour of every day, but sometimes it's after every single visit, they're going to log their visit in KickUp, and that's their documentation of what they're doing. And so some of the things you're going to see on this drop-down menu are going to be basic things like date, how long were you there, what part of the coaching cycle are you in, the impact cycle specifically. There's always going to be free text response for just give me a summary of what happened. And then like one of the nice data sources is we have an optional question such as coaching hours. And in this coaching hours, we've got this coaching barriers question. And it's optional, not every single specialist does, but many of our specialists will just kind of self-rate and self-reflect. How did that coaching visit go? And as you can see, this is where we would want to see the largest chunk is going to be right here with the no significant challenges. But what this does is this lets us also, and this is aggregated for the entire department. So if we wanted to, we can get a little bit more granular and break down by specialist, but we can see that of all of our barriers, we're going to see some follow through and some implementation. So as a manager and with the people that I supervise, that's going to give me some real quick red flags if there's a particular problem that's coming up. So this gives me a nice quick view as to what's happening. This is a live view of all the specialist coaching, and we're still out coaching today. Another thing that we might be able to pull by is if we just wanted to look by who is submitting the coaching hours. And so let's say I want to see what's happening this week. So the default is going to be for a year, but if you want to do a real quick filter on, let's see who's been coaching this week and what they're doing. So I would just start the start date on the 20th, and then the end date is today. And you can see we've got some coaching hours. Now, this is just raw hours, but if I wanted to dig in a little bit more, I can scroll that down and we can see which specialists are coaching. And once again, if I am got a team of 6 people, and if I pull this up and I see that I know all 6 of my people are here, but one of my names is going to be maybe just 1 or 2 hours for the week, then that could be something to where I check and say, hey, have you checked your KickUp for this week? Have you done your documentation for this week? Because sometimes things happen and specialists get a little bit behind. So that's just a few different areas that we can do to get these little bit more data. We could break it down by school, by feeder pattern, anything that you ask the specialists to submit information, even if it's optional, you can pull back later and start sorting you. And that's kind of data stuff that gets me all excited on the inside.
Thanks so much for all that context on how you got to this point of piloting coaching cycles this year with your team. So yeah, I know that folks want to see what does that actually look like in practice. So I'm gonna go ahead and show just like a sample teacher's view of their coaching cycle in KickUp. And I guess to start, we'll notice that there are 4 different steps that are part of that process that align really closely to the impact cycles framework. So I just wanted to first start off by asking you what value did you and your team see in tracking each of those as distinct stages in their coaching work?
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of using these coaching cycles, is that this is really linear. Now we know that in the real world, right, it's very iterative and it's not as concrete as this, but it makes it very simple to say, I'm going to start from the top. I'm going to move. If I ever get lost in my coaching, maybe I haven't been back in a while, or something has pulled me away and I need to pick things back up, I know exactly where I left off. And these, the goal setting lives within that identify phase. But for the purposes of using the platform of KickUp, what we realized is we had to pull it out separately. So you would do those first 2 together. You would set the goal, and then you would kind of fill out that real quick form of what we did for the identify phase. And then all other actions live underneath that goal. So the goal drives everything, because as we've heard from Diane and from Jim, if you don't have a good quality goal, and if you don't have one that teachers are buying into, that is meaningful, Jim uses the peers model. Elena Aguilar's got the SMART E model. We use something internally, the TAPS model. However you're going to set up your goal, if that's not solid, then everything else is going to be so much more difficult than it needs to. So that goal, once we set that goal, that's where everything lives. And you just select that goal and everything kind of pops up.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, I love that idea of centering the goal. And we know across all the leading coaching models how important it is to really have the goal that's collaboratively established be front and center.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought we could just show folks what your team's goal setting process looks like. So you can see there's like a focus that they select from a drop down, and then just one prompt for what is the TAPS goal, and then an additional optional prompt for notes on the goal setting conversation. And so we won't go into all the forms, but I did notice in working with you that all of the documentation forms for all the stages are sort of similarly sparse. There's just a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to ask you sort of how you balanced the need to capture sort of the teacher's progression through the impact cycles with ease of use for your specialists.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. That's why we decided the impact cycle kind of lives on top of the regular coaching documentation, right? So every time they're walking in and out of the classroom, they are, they're documenting the date, the time, the teacher, all of those basic things, right? That's the documentation of our work. If it's related, most of it is related to the impact cycle, then they go back, they do this as an additional step. So to us, it was like, well, we need to keep this as simple as possible. Just for data purposes, trying to merge those 2 together is what got us our first coaching log, and it ended, the data just kind of looked weird on our end. It wasn't super helpful. So we wanted to keep it sparse because we're not wanting to make it an hour and a half of of documenting every single coaching interaction because we'd rather have the specialist in with the teachers. So it's merely is what are we looking for? Like the goal is it's what do we need? And that's the only required thing because the goal drives everything. So our TAPS is timely aligned, purposeful, and specific. There it is very aligned with the peers model, but we would write, and it's a process that's collaborative, and our TAPS goals are kind of beefy because we want to embed the specific strategy used to meet the goal within that goal so that it almost lives as its own entity. Something like, increase, increase student engagement. That's not a good goal because you don't know how to measure it, how you're going to get there, when you're going to be done. So once we get that, then that's literally what this step is. It's just recording what is that goal. And if you want, for your own purposes, you could kind of summarize the goal setting conversation. And then every other step, the identify, the learn, and the improve, it's very similar. It's what there could be a few check boxes and then some optional, text boxes for you to make your own notes. So we wanted to keep it light because the bulk of the work is done by the specialist, by our coach, with the teacher in person. This isn't something that we can do via email or that we can do simply by filling out sheets, right? We're not coaching through correspondence course. So we didn't want to put an over heavy burden on coaches to over document everything.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up, that, the additional burden and how you all can really embed that structure so that there is fidelity with your coaching model, but it's really lightweight and just the bare minimum. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste in just some sample text so folks can see what it looks like sort of once the goal is populated.
Sure.
And then there was one other thing that we've talked about in the past that I wanted to ask you about, and that's this idea of optional steps.
Yeah.
So I know you all for your team have some additional rounds for learn and improve that you all included as optional steps that could be added, but by default are left off. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about you and your team's thinking behind sort of the choice to include these optional steps.
Sure. Well, as Jim was describing the impact cycle earlier, and with him on the Zoom, I'm not going to try to explain the impact cycle back to him, but we realize that as you get from you identify the goal, you figure out what's your strategy, how you can implement that goal, and that improve phase is really looking to see, did we meet our goal, right? And how do we need to make tweaks? And at the end of that coaching cycle, hopefully, ideally, you make the goal, you meet the goal, and you can decide, all right, let's close this out. Let's count it as a victory. Let's move on. Let's open up a new goal. What do we want to do next? But sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you miss the goal and you've got options there. Maybe the strategy that you did in the learn phase wasn't quite really what needed to happen, right? You thought maybe I can just send this teacher to go watch another model classroom. But really they needed me to come in there and do some side-by-side. And so what you could do is you can add on, you can keep the goal and you can add an additional learn phase to say, we're going to go back and we're going to do a different strategy. Or if we need to, we can just extend the time, right? Sometimes you hit the goal, you're close to hitting the goal, but it's not within the time frame you desired, but you're just really close, something got in the way and you want to extend it. And so that is through the KickUp platform, that's our way of recognizing that the cycle seems simple with 3 steps, but in real life it can get messy and you need the option to flex based on what happens with the implementation and the success of that goal.